1 year ago, I began production on a stop-motion film. Born yet from another random and cool idea of a niche fight sequence, it's grown into something that back then, I would have never imagined it to be. From a silly little monster battle to a large, engrossing, and mysterious action story, this film has begun to take shape into something truly special for me. And if I'm able to climb this wall of this project that I have slowly been building brick by brick for myself over this past year, I truly can't imagine the amazing things I see myself and potentially many others being able to do and make in their lives just from a single idea or creative thought. Stop-motion animation is a filmmaking technique in which objects placed in front of a camera are physically manipulated or moved in small increments between the taken photographs. These photographs are then formatted into the moving frames of video, so that when the video is played back, the object appears to exhibit independent animation or change when the series of frames is played forward. Like I said previously, I've been a long-time follower of stop-motion, being a loving consumer of its art forms and even being a producer of some stop-motion animations myself. I've made a number of radically different and constantly changing films over my years on YouTube, but something seems to be able to link them all together flawlessly. Stop motion. In the series of films I've made over the past few years, I've been working on the same film for this past year alone, a lot of it being spent on the same stop motion animation and projects. Now when I say this, I don't want you to expect me to be making anything as insanely amazing as the stop motion film Mad God or Kubo and the Two Strings, which of course I strive to be like. But I have been putting as much time and effort into this film as I can, and it's definitely come with its ups and downs. But with that, this current project has already broken through so many creative barriers. I've learned countless new tricks in the process of making this, and I'm not even finished with it. So when I say it's gonna be great, it's gonna be great, because I already love this film so far, and there's so much more for me to learn from it. But with all that hype, and the many ways that this project has impacted my creative processes, I've never worked with such a large scope before in terms of my films. There have been countless rewrites, redesigns, recontextualization, and just straight up abandoning concepts when they've already been made. But I'm not getting too ahead of myself with this one. In hopes to ignite some interest in the film, and just have a platform to talk about some creative endeavors I've been through over this past year, I'm going to talk about the created and scrapped productions for this film, the concepts and designs that I were originally going to use but scrapped and replaced with what is currently being used as of now, the number of lore changes, scenic changes, and especially monster design changes, which is definitely what I'm most excited to talk about, is insane, but at the same time it gives me that much more to talk about. A year ago, I came up with this drawing entirely out of no intention to make anything of it. A stoic and ominous looking knight figure with a cool, long sword and covered in some dope armor and drapery. Revolutionary design skills, I know. Anyway, around this time last year, I had just gotten into a small and pretty unknown manga series that not a lot of people will know about. You might know it, I don't really know. It's Berserk. You've probably never seen anything about it. I had been in the midst of my first playthrough of the game Bloodborne. These two properties at the time were very important to me because they both ignited a newfound love for art that I feel like I was missing for a long time. A lot of new interests sprouted from these mediums, such as my love for gothic and brutalist architecture aesthetics and other cool fantasy-related mediums. So this is a drawing that I will probably be referring back to a few times, whether it's in this video or others that I make later down the line. Some time would pass before I would start to redraw this guy a few more times. I felt a strange attachment to the design that kind of just stuck with me. Over and over again, I would sketch or draw him here and there in my drawing pads. While in the midst of the cycle of drawing this character I randomly made, I was trying to come up with an idea for my next film that I wanted to make. A little bit during this time, I was beginning to have another resurgence of love for the sci-fi genre, like robots and advanced machinery. So I was wanting to begin to incorporate ideas of a robot fight, where it would be some human in a battle with a large looming android attempting to execute the main character. After a few sketches and drawings of robot designs and ideas for my film, I realized that I had already done something pretty similar before in an older project I posted a while back. Another film about a big android fighting off a human character in a fight sequence. If I had gone through with this film, I'm sure it would have turned out way better than that one had, considering the new experiences that I've had with film production and stop motion. I decided to scrap the robot idea entirely though, in pursuit of a more fashionable monster fight. I came across the idea that the film should be set in an arena of sorts, again an inspiration of my love for gothic aesthetics and large, grand scenes. Maybe the film would consist of a gladiator type fight between a man and whatever other foe I decide to place against him. And so I began to think about possible villains to propose into an arena type environment. Being into Bloodborne and Berserk still, and I still am of course, I began to take inspiration from monster designs such as those. shadows, trying to create my one Dark Souls aesthetic creature with the intention of giving the beast a weapon of its own. So I began to shoot ideas about what the monster would look like, what shape it would have, how it would act, move, fight, and more. But first, I realized that I should probably design the monster itself before I got to all that. I began to throw down some sketches of the possible head shapes it would have. Maybe it would be a blind monster and have a large crest on top of its head. Or maybe it would have a head more entitled to that of a deer with large building antlers to skewer its enemies. The possibilities were of course endless, but I seemed to have landed on a particular design that I liked. I landed on the idea of a sort of fallen angel visual for the monster. I wanted it to be contorted in some way or another to further push its morbid look, so I took inspiration from another monster design that I've personally loved for a while now, that being the Angel of Death from Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. I always loved the fact that he had no eyes, and instead they'd be scattered on his wings to look out with instead. I wouldn't go as far as putting eyes on the wings, but I would rid the monster's face of any eyes, and instead I would put that large crest protruding from the top like a halo. I really liked this visual. It was a cool head for a monster that I really liked, and I thought it was a new and fresh take for something I've never made. I continued to draw more and more heads based off of the sketches and came out with a mostly final depiction of the monster. A huge, lumbering beast reminiscent of an infected angel with some sort of growth spreading through its body and skin. I thought for a bit what I wanted him to hold as his weapon of choice, so eventually I came to the decision of giving him a pair of large rusted sickles. I think the idea fits the design even now pretty well. The first idea I had for him was that he would carry a literal scythe, but I determined that would probably be leaning a bit too much into the Angel of Death thing. And at this point, scythes could be seen as a pretty generic weapon because of that. So I decided to go with something I thought was more reminiscent of a scythe than straight up just being one. I showed the sketch to my friends to get a second opinion on the design. They looked down to the paper, caressed it softly, and gazed back at me with hardened and stoic expressions, as if about to speak greatness upon the design that I have made in its intense, invigorating horror.
This guy looks like Margaret from Elden Ring.
Margaret from Elden Ring? I looked down at the drawing.
What the Sigma? What the Sigma?
All jokes aside though, I took some time to look the sketch over that day after school had passed, and honestly, I kinda agree with what my friends had joked about. Looking at it as a whole, I felt like the general design of the creature seemed too generic to me. There was a tinge of disappointment that would ring out anytime I looked at it after some time had passed, and though I look back on it now, I totally get how I thought that way. I felt like it wasn't really what I wanted from the film, or what I wanted from the monster. Having this much freedom in terms of design, it didn't feel like I was really putting much thought into how it looked. Its design didn't feel me enough. After taking some time to look over what I didn't like about the design that I made, I thought of what I would really want to see in a monster design in terms of what I was going for with the film. A dirty, gruesome fight with huge weapons and intense action. What could I change about this that would truly turn it into a design of my own? That didn't to me feel like I was just ripping off of other monster designs I liked. So later that night, I just started sketching a few ideas for more monster designs out of pure boredom. Pretty shortly after doing this, literally one drawing after the first I had done, right after sitting down on my bed, I looked down at my drawing pad and I realized that I had just made, at the time, one of the coolest creatures I had come up with for a stop motion. Basing the sketch from my abnormal fear of deers for some reason, I drew a more mammalian and animalistic monster head with a protruding crest of twisting horns like the mane of a lion. To get more of a feel for the new idea, I kept going with this sketch, and eventually I drew a full-body 2-page depiction of what now seemed like my newest breakthrough in the monster design. Looking at the drawing, something just clicked for me. I knew that this was going to be what I wanted to have in my newest film, the biggest and coolest figure I'm ever going to make for a stop motion to date. I again showed the creature to my friends, who stared down at it with some stoic and intense expression, slowly looking up at me. They gave me a thumbs up and said it was cool. Very cool. While drawing up some other ideas of the monster, I came up with new names and settings for what the film would take place in, based on the creature's new design and what I wanted him to be more representative of. The concept of the film taking place in an arena slowly morphed and changed into an old and decrepit throne room, decorated by pillars and cobwebs alike. This would come to mind while I began to draw a picture of the monster sitting on a large throne. A quick glance at the drawing, I can still kind of tell why the idea seems so appealing. The huge crest of twisting horns, looking very reminiscent of a crown to me, with the old thick robes that I imagined the monster wearing alongside that. The idea of it being some long, ruling beast lost to time was a very appealing idea to me. Along with the setting changes, the weapon that the monster would wield in battle with the main character would naturally change as well. Rather than a pair of rusted sickles covered with the blood of its past victims, the weapon turned into a large, hulking sword. Before I mention any further design choices I made about the monster, unlike the first incarnation of the film, I actually created a general outline for the lore that would go hand in hand with the film itself. From what I can recall from the few notes and pretty well-regarded memory of the story I had written, it was decided that the monster would actually be one of 3 main villains in a series that I had been planning to make based off of the film, if I of course would have the ambition to further add to the world that was. Under that assumption, however, I of course only really made it through the lore of this creature. I of course wanted him to be an old, forgotten ruler, the ruler of one powerful and foreboding kingdom that had at one point in time fallen to ruin for some reason. However, in spite of this mysterious happening, the king felt it necessary to stay where he had resided for however long he had lived his whole life there. For the overall plot of the films, I was going to make an attempt to have each monster showcased be some form of negative doing, such as this monster, who I wanted to be the physical embodiment of greed. The word greed in Greek is translated to the word aplistia, which I settled on as being the name of the monster. Aplistia was supposed to be no ordinary greedy monster, however. Aplistia's greed only leached out for one object and object only, a key. Aplistia would protect this key with all the power he can endure, just to not give up something that now has no use to him after so much time has passed. I have no idea what the key would have done, but I do remember having the intention that it would relate in some way or another to the other monsters I would incorporate to my other films. For example, another monster would be protecting a large lock of some sorts, maybe a door that leads to a mysterious other secret. This would of course be the lock that is only compatible with that of the key protected by Aplistia. The main character would fight these monsters in order to collect and use these items that the many monsters guarded. For this film in particular, I was going to have it so that the knight-like character I had shown a few minutes ago would just fight Aplistia. In a duel to the death, the winner takes all. And that all is the key that Aplistia has bared for so long. The knight would eventually win the fight after the duel goes down with Aplistia. The way he would win, I drew out quickly on one of the pages. Aplistia would be trapped under the same metal gate that had trapped the knight when he entered the room in the beginning of the film. The knight would then kill Aplistia while stuck under the gate and take the key, to which the film would end. And that's about all I remember from what I had in mind in the old project, including what I remember about the plot of the series that never really came to be. There might be a few insignificant details that I've forgotten to mention, but that's just what I had in mind all the time ago. I'm sorry if that explanation seemed to be boring to you, but that was just a general consensus of how the film would have continued if I ever ended up making them. However, not only did I write out a general outline of the film's plot, finish the concept drawings of Aplistia in the setting that the film would take place in, I went as far as creating and finalizing an entire stop-motion figure for Aplistia. All designed, molded, created, and finalized for my would-be film in honor of his showcase. I had a lot of anticipation going into it, considering that at the time, and to this day, it's the largest stop-motion figure I've made. The whole time while making him, I was just thinking about the little details and tiny things I could add to him to make Aplistia that much cooler to look at in the film. And good on me for thinking so open-mindedly at the time. Looking at him now, I can of course see what I would personally do different with his design, but even then I really do love how he turned out, especially his sword, which turned out way better than I had thought it would, and is honestly one of my favorite props I've made for a character to this day. A lot of time and effort went into the making of Aplistia, and I can really tell just how much I cared about making him look good. All the small chains and details hanging from his robes and body are all really cool additions that even looking at now I can appreciate, considering the figure is a few months old at this point. His head is of course my favorite aspect of the figure. I had a lot of fun sculpting the horns and putting it together. I even gave Aplistia a moving jaw and tongue made from felt so that I even gave him a movable jaw and tongue made from felt so that I can make him roar and other stuff like that. I was really looking ahead to what I would do with this guy for the film. But as you know, something went wrong. All of this has led up to what the video is about and what you clicked on it for, which is the fact that the film I have been discussing this whole time has been cancelled and was cancelled a little bit ago, or just scrapped entirely, including the figure. However, there are a few reasons for this. One of the bigger reasons is that during all of this, I was beginning to grow more and more exhausted of the project that I haven't even started filming yet. The story that I had made around it seemed too boring to me, and honestly, I was having a lot of other ideas in terms of how the film should be made and what should be introduced. Now that I was in the mindset of trying to establish my own fictional world for the first time in a while, I was growing more and more ideas for how it would work in the stories that could be told through it. In this, I was beginning to develop actual connections through things that I liked and was beginning to realize that all the stuff I wanted to do wouldn't be able to work in the context of the world I had originally begun to work on. I have a deep-seated love for all things having to do with monsters and creatures, whether it's old giant souls-like monsters or advanced technologies and robots. There are a number of ideas that I had and still have in my head that I would love to execute in any films of my own. But with what I was trying to establish with this current film, it would have seemed weird to have the ability to add things like robots and stuff like that to a world that was supposed to be a fantasy-esque environment of mythical creatures and stuff like that. And along this train of thought, I slowly kind of burnt out from the story and realized that it really only served one thing that I was constraining myself to creatively, which was the 3 monsters and stuff like that, and I didn't want to develop a story that would constrain me in the future. The biggest setback that I had with the pre-production of the film came back to bite me in the dumbest way possible. The reason being the figure itself, Aplistia. Now remember a moment ago when I referred to how much detail and cool additions I made to Aplistia while making his figure? Well, it turns out that younger me was only into the mindset of looks, and not entirely the mindset of functionality. This was a very big issue due to all the detail and just general size of Aplistia. I had accidentally made it so that he was way too heavy to really hold himself. Now that's not to say he was too heavy to stand up by himself. He is fully capable of doing so because of his huge tail. However, his general size and the shape was going to make it very hard for me to be able to make it so that in the film he'd be able to move functionally or in a way that was visually appealing. Due to the shape and inflexibility of his body and shortness of his legs, it would most likely look super odd to have him animated to be moving in a film, especially in a fight scene. Things like this really helped to lead me to not wanting to even begin on the film. I had a fear that it wouldn't turn out good, and that wasn't good. It was at this point that I had already begun to have doubts in the story I was trying to make. Along with this, I became unsatisfied with what I knew the film would turn out to be. It seemed too ambitious for me at the time. The scale of Aplistia and the fight as a whole. I began to question myself on how I would even keep something like the film interesting. If it's just a monster throwing a sword around at a smaller guy with a smaller sword, there doesn't seem like there's much variety in how the film could be shot to me. The more I thought about it and questioned the ethics of the ideas I had, it became clearer to me that it just wouldn't turn out to be what I wanted, and that was the worst part. This would eventually lead into the production of my next idea for the film, and the next redesign for Aplistia. I wish I could talk more about the drawings and all the ideas that I had for that new reincarnation, but I'll have to separate that into a different video on its own accord. There's a lot of cool ideas with that monster, and I'm sure that one will turn up in a future film at some point, just because of how much, even to this day, I like the design. But like I said, this will have to wait. So then, if you want to stay tuned for other abandoned and scrapped concepts from my currently working on film, and you enjoyed this one of many breakdowns soon to come, feel free to like the video and subscribe if you're interested. Now, as we come to the conclusion of the video, I want to talk about a sentiment that resonates deeply with me. The importance of embracing change and growth in our creative mind. It's natural to feel a bit of nostalgia for the projects that we've left behind in pursuit of what we think will be better for us. But it's equally important to recognize that this evolution is an integral part of the creative process. I want to emphasize that the decision to scrap certain projects doesn't diminish the value that goes into their conception. Each idea I've explored has contributed to the film that I'm in the midst of working on right now, and I wouldn't take anything back from it just to get a little bit of that time back. What's truly remarkable is the transformation that has taken place within the confines of this film. witnessing its growth and development has been a source of immense satisfaction and pride for me. As I look back on this moment in the future, I have no doubt that I'll do it with fondness and gratitude. This video and many more will serve me as a reminder of the dedication that has brought me to where the project is today. The same should be said about anything that you yourself are working on. If you're one of those creative minds who always gets stuck on one thing and the next, let it be known that things like that can only help us in our creative journeys while working on projects like this. Not just stop motion films, of course, but any passion related project that you have. There will always be bumps in your travels, but those are the same bumps that help you better understand your footing and help you become quicker and more proficient further down your creative path in life. And rest assured that this journey is far from over. There are still countless changes, twists, and revelations awaiting you and me in the future. I'm eager to continue sharing these insights into my film with you in upcoming videos, delving deeper into the intricacies of the creative process. So as we part ways for now, I extend my heartfelt blessings and wish for you to have a day filled with inspiration and joy. I hope that you carry the spirit of creativity wherever you go, and may each day be an opportunity to explore new paths and horizon for you. Until we meet again, take care, and may your journey be as enriching and fulfilling as mine has been. God bless, and have a truly amazing day.
Yo, this guy looks like Margit from Elden Ring.
Yeah.
This guy... It looks like... this guy looks like Margit from Elden Ring. Yo, bro.